Some good news for the greenskins of 40k, as Orks have taken down a really big tournament, one of the best wins for the greenskins in quite a while. Let's take a look at the winning list, and a couple more strong Ork army lists in current 40k at the moment. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Orks, and today I thought we'd take a look at some of the strongest Ork army lists around, showcasing some of the strongest options for the war at the moment. The headline news today is certainly that Orks have basically taken down the SoCal Open, a really big 40k tournament with a bunch of top players in attendance, over 150 people, and it's fairly big news that an Ork list has won that. They haven't been seeing an enormous amount of success in grand tournaments in the Nephilim season. They're certainly an army that has their issues, and a fair few datasheets are kind of underwhelming at the moment, but really quite cool to see that they can have good achievement even at the highest levels of play. As well as that, I thought we'd take a look at a couple of other strong Ork army lists at the moment to highlight some alternate takes on what works for the greenskins at the moment. So first up, let's take a look at the list that won Frontline Gaming's SoCal Open, a huge tournament of over 160 players. When you do get to events of this size, it basically guarantees that the event gets won by a very good list and plays very well as well. The event was won by a Benjamin Jurek, bringing some good news for the Orks in October, and winning 6 games on the trot with a mighty Goths list led by Gazgul. Goths do pretty much seem to be the go-to competitive choice for Orks at the moment. In terms of their sub-faction rules, the massive melee buff that they get of +1 strength and exploding 6s is kind of hard to beat for the other clans at the moment unless you're going very shooty. Plus is particularly nice for Gazgul's buffs. The list is made up of a Goth battalion and a Supreme Command attachment for Gazgul. Gazgul's the Warlord and takes his Warlord trait of +1 attacks and extra AP as well, and he's just an enormous threat for the enemy to try and take out. A damage cap of taking no more than 4 wounds means that he's hard to deal with for any list that relies on just one phase like shooting, and is pretty much guaranteed to cause at least some carnage. He also gives you full rerolls to nearby Goth core or characters too, no bad thing for yet more damage, and he also allows your Great War as well, so you get some benefits both out of the War for the invul saves and some extra damage out of the vehicles. Otherwise, we've got a War Boss on a War Bike using the Forge World datasheet. He takes the Brutal but Cunning trait for getting an extra attack with every hit that doesn't reach damage infliction, and he backs that up with a Killer Claw as well, the damage 3 Power Claw with no modifiers to hit, a murderous tried and tested combo with a whole load of damage, and with the great movement of the War Bike he'll get that to where it needs to be. Then there's a Weird Boy with Dajump and Fists of Gorg. Dajump is really nice for manoeuvring units around the board and getting them to exactly where they need to be, and Fists of Gork could be great on either Gazgul or the War Boss. Extra strength and particularly extra attacks will be a brutal increase on already strong melee characters. Then beyond the murderous core of the list, there's 2 big squads of Beast Snagger boys, 10 models in each, and I presume that they're going to be riding in the kill rigs. Very dangerous with their Goths attacks at strength 6, plus exploding 6s on top of that and bonuses against vehicles. There's 3 Gretchen for holding down actions and objectives. At 40 points per squad, they're really quite cheap and expendable now. I thought that was quite a nice change when Games Workshop made it with the updated points values. Perhaps one of the coolest things about the list is there's a really heavy use of commandos. 2 big units of 10 commandos with a Power Claw, Bomb Squig and Breacher Ram. It's really quite nice to see them actually used as a big damage dealer unit and not just a bare bones minimum placeholder unit with 5 models. They are certainly threatening enough in Goths. They're a lot tougher against shooting if they can get cover. They get the bonus to wound against enemies that happen to be next to cover, which is another really nice melee boost. And I think it's fun that they managed to use some of the main upgrades for them as well. The Power Claw and the Breacher Ram, and Bomb Squigs are a pretty cheap and effective source of mortal wounds. Then there is one cheap barebone squad of commandos with 5 models, perhaps better suited to hiding on objectives than threatening first turn charges maybe. A unit of fairly scary Mega Knobs with Power Claws and custom shooters. Perhaps they might be jumping out of that battle wagon and could be a nice unit to have near to Gazgul if possible. Getting 4 rolls on their melee attacks would be very nice indeed. If you wanted more damage out of them, you could get an extra +1 damage for 2 CP. Lastly, for the squads, we've got 3 units of 3 Squighog Riders, each with a Bomb Squig as well. They're pretty much a staple in most Ork lists at the moment. Fairly tough, pretty dangerous in melee, fairly fast as well, maybe just a little bit weak on the leadership front, which means you might not want too many of them. Finally, we've got 3 big and meaty transports, 2 kill rigs that both take the Squiggly Curse for some mortal wound goodness. They're generally big, fast, dangerous and threatening models, decent melee, decent psychic, and okay shooting, they transport the Beast Snagger boys into battle, and have a fun stratagem to slow down enemy units if you need it. Finally, there's a battle wagon with a death roller, pretty much the way that I'd want to field battle wagons myself. Really quite cheap at 120 points, a decent melee threat, and also gets another scary unit where it needs to be, likely the Mega Knobs. Overall, looks like a really solid and threatening list with a whole bunch of melee threats and making great use of the Goths clan culture, and it looks like it's got quite a lot of good options in terms of secondary objectives, potentially using Get Da Good Bits or Green Tide, and you could maybe even use the biggest and the best with Gasgol on the board if you can get into the midfield and killing things. It looks like the list mainly spent its time running through various different chaos lists in the tournament, taking out demons, then a more mixed chaos list, and then a Black Legion list in the last round. Perhaps not the worst matchups in the world for an Orc army, they tend to struggle quite a bit against things like Tyranids. Still though, very cool to see Orcs doing so well, and certainly a real achievement of player skill to make them win a tournament of this many people. Otherwise, I thought we'd take a look at another couple of recent strong Orc lists, just to see other choices that can work very well as well. In the same tournament, in 11th place is Sean Naden's list, obviously another very experienced player, and despite finishing just outside of the top 10, I believe there was only one loss out of the 6 rounds as well, so really not all that far behind. This one's really quite an interesting army build with a Goths battalion, patrol, and supreme command. That one allows you to spam 3 different war bosses. This one basically seems to be Orc Hero Hammer with Gasgol Thracker, a War Boss on Warbag with the same setup, and then backing them up with a Beast Boss on Squigosaur as well, who's got a pretty meaty melee profile in himself, but also takes the Beast Hide Mantle for a 5+ Feel No Pain, and the proper killy Goths Warlord trait. The extra AP really is quite nice on the Squigosaur boss, as he doesn't have all that much to begin with. Otherwise, there's also Boss Zagstruck here as well, for another fast moving and very dangerous melee threat, and then even further there's 2 knobs on Smasher Squigs too, the ones that deal lots of mortal wounds when they charge into combat, and then also get to work on you with a big chopper. I do find it pretty funny just how many character protected Orc units can be slamming into you here, and all of them pretty ludicrously dangerous in their own way. Moving on to squads, and again there's 2 transports, one battle wagon with a death roller with some extra protection, an hard case, fortress on wheels, and a lobber. Otherwise, there's a very cheap battle wagon at just 105 points, pretty tough for the cost, presumably not quite enough points for a death roller, which would have been quite nice to add on. For filling those transports, it looks like there's options. 2 10-strong units of boys, 1 of beast snaggers and 1 of regular boys, and then 2 units of 4 mega knobs with power claws and custom shooters, and he could have 2 units within 1 transport. There's really quite a lot of Gretchen as well, 4 units of 10 with 2 of them taking that Horrible Gits upgrade, the specialist mob one that gives you objective secured. They're quite good for that get the good bits action as well if they get to do actions on midfield objectives. Finally, besides the big scary melee units in the battle wagons, there's 2 units of 3 Squighog riders with the bomb squigs, and then 1 single Lonely Death Dread with 4 claws and the Stompomatic pistons, and brutal combat countercharge threat, though maybe not that hard to take out if you do manage to draw line of sight to it. Quite a potent combat threat though, 7 attacks at strength 10, AP 3 and damage 3. Overall really quite a different take on Goths, definitely some overlap with Gasgol, Gretchen, and a bunch of scary melee units and transports plus some Squighogs. Quite cool to see it so character heavy though, and a Death Dread in attendance as well. Finally, for one more successful Orc list, a very different variety. Perhaps the other Orc army archetype besides Goths that sees a fair bit of play are the Speed Mobs, though they perhaps are a bit more of an inflexible army, having some serious fast attack detachment slot issues, even if they do gain you a bunch of powerful stuff, including advancing and shooting all over the board, 5+ invul saves when you do advance, and +1 attacks when you charge as well, which is pretty handy. Here's one example of a speed mob list that's done very well recently. It's one by a Will Paul who used it to take second at the Montreal Major Open. The list itself is apparently a freebooter speed mob, maybe a bit of an odd choice seeing as freebooters I don't think really adds that much to proceedings. You do get the keyword, but you don't actually get the powerful shooting trait, and the stratagem isn't particularly useful either as it keys off infantry, so it wouldn't be usable on anything here. In general, perhaps it's a bit more typical to see Evil Sun speed mobs, then at least you've got to use that drive-by Daka stratagem for 1 CP, allowing you a move shoot move if you need to. In any case, the vast majority of the benefits are coming from the actual speed mob formation, that trait plus a bunch of stratagems, extra damage in melee with things like crashing through, and really quite a nice stratagem for Deathcopters. The list is led by a Deathkiller Wartrike with Speed King, Speed King allows you rerolls on nearby speed mob units, quite a helpful extra warlord trait for a bit more damage, plus his speed wire will allow you to get extra AP and more shots with dagger weapons. Then for the main threats in the list, we have a big unit of 6 Deathcopters, almost auto-include in speed mob with that really cool attack out of the sun stratagem that allows you to jump off the battlefield after you've done damage, and then potentially just deep strike down again next turn, and perhaps use the 2 CP ramming speeds to get them back into combat if they want to be. There's then 3 sets of 3 of the buggies, 3 custom booster blasters, Megatrack scrap jets, and Rock Truck squig buggies. The booster blasters are nice and cheap at 80 points, plus they have a whole ton of anti-infantry damage up close with the burner exhausts, and they do have a really nice stratagem in speed mob as well, 1 CP to reroll 1s or 2s to hit. That's actually pretty meaningful when you're firing away with 3 rivet cannons, or within dagger range for 9 strength 7 damage 2 shots. There's then 3 Megatrack scrap jets, perhaps the most efficient out of any of the buggies maybe, a whole bunch of anti-tank fire plus some brutal melee, and then interesting to see 3 rock drop squig buggies here. The barrage nerf maybe means that they're a bit less efficient when they're not shooting directly, but it seems they're still good enough to get the nod, plus they do have a little bit of melee themselves as well. Then there's 2 units of zippy expendable warbikers, 2 units of 3, and they get the obsec rule in the speed mob. They can do a bit of damage with all that dagger gun fire, but I think their main purpose will mainly be just to secure objectives. Units are a little bit thin on the ground with speed mob if you lose some. And then there's 3 more supporting units, 2 big scary wasp bomb blaster jets with the super shooters and the scary damage D3+3 teleport mega blasters that hit on force. One of them takes a blaster jet force field as well to cover them with 5+ invuls, as they don't get that from the main speed mob benefits. Finally, there's a tough battle wagon, a bone breaker with a cannon upgrade, perhaps partly a choice out of necessity as the fast attack slots are full. I have a feeling that just the standard battle wagon with the death roller might be a bit more efficient, but if there were a few points going spare that were left over, then upgrading one to a bone breaker doesn't seem the worst. Overall, it is quite cool to see that a very different style of orc list can still work well. I feel like the speed mob is really quite a nice example of an army of renown that really does make a very different style of list work well, giving powerful benefits even if you do have some big trade-offs like locking out most of the sections of the Codex, as it does mean that lists like these will struggle with certain secondary objectives and things, and perhaps be a bit more forced to try and win on the primary or kill opponents' units if they do want to score points. I think we'll leave that there for today though. Let me know what you make of the orc lists and any other insights as to how any of these were played. Always look forward to hearing further insights about how they work down in the comments. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k content coming. I do tend to post new videos just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention quickly that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page. It is what allows me to make these videos quite so regularly, so if you are enjoying a lot, any support is enormously appreciated. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, an enormous thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.